Nice. Okay. All right. Okay. You don't have a sheet either. We have one more. We have one. We have three, I think. Okay. Everyone has a book. We're good. Okay. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotar, the Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Bhagavadgitacharya Ashtotar, the Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, we're going to be studying page 119 tonight. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 22nd day of January 2019 in SanDiego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 2 entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, and we're on text 52, page 119. Yada te moha kalilam buddhi vyatitarishyati tada ganthasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shutasya cha. Yada te moha kalilam buddhi vyatitarishyati tada ganthasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shutasya cha. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyatatarishyati tadaganthasi nirvedam shotavyasya shutasya cha. Kanai, you want to try? Not tonight? Go ahead, Rajesh. Yadati moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tadaganthasi nirvedam shotavyasya shutasya cha. Okay. Anyone on this side? Hina? No. Never. Okay.
Never, no.
Not this lifetime. Yadati moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishyati tadaganthasi nirvedam shotavyasya shutasya cha. Okay. I'll read the word-by-word meanings myself. You can read along silently. Yada, when, te, your, moha, of illusion, kalilam, dense forest, buddhi, transcendental service with intelligence, vyatitarishyati, surpasses, tada, at that time. We're on page 119. Okay? 119, text 52. Tada, at that time, gantha asi, you shall go, nirvedam, callousness, shotavyasya, toward all that is to be heard, shrutasya, all that is already heard, cha, also. Translation. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. Purport. There are many good examples in the lives of the great devotees of the Lord, of those who became indifferent to the rituals of the Vedas simply by devotional service to the Lord. When a person factually understands Krishna and his relationship with Krishna, he naturally becomes completely indifferent to the rituals of fruitive activities, even though an experienced Brahmin. Sri Madhavendra Puri, a great devotee and acharya in the line of the devotees, says, and I'll just read this one myself, Sandhya vandana bhadramasta bhavato bosnana tubhyam namo bodeva pitadascha tarpana badhao naham chamacham yatham yatra kvapi nashadya yadavakalottang sasya kang sadvisha smadam agam haramitabavam manye kamanye me. All my prayers 3 times a day, all glory to you. All bathing, I offer my obeisances unto you. O demigods, O forefathers, please excuse me for my inability to offer you my respects. Now, wherever I sit, I can remember the great descendant of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, and thereby I can free myself from all sinful bondage. I think this is sufficient for me. The Vedic rites and rituals are imperative for neophytes, comprehending all kinds of prayer 3 times a day, taking a bath early in the morning, offering respects to the forefathers, etc. But when one is fully in Krishna consciousness and is engaged in his transcendental loving service, one becomes indifferent to all these regulative principles because he has already attained perfection. If one can reach the platform of understanding by service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, he has no longer to execute different types of penances and sacrifices as recommended in revealed scriptures. And similarly, if one has not understood that the purpose of the Vedas is to reach Krishna and simply engages in the rituals, etc., then he is uselessly wasting time in such engagements. Persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of Shabda Brahma, or the range of the Vedas and the Upanishads. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Udmitatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this verse needs to be understood in context, obviously. And what's going on here is that if you go back to the first chapter, you'll find that we're on a battlefield, the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And there's a great battle about to begin. Arjuna is the greatest fighter on the side of, say, virtue. He has 4 brothers, one of whom is Yudhishthir, who is the son of Dharma personified, Yamaraj. And the whole plot up to this point is 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, are part of a much larger book called the Bhagavad. Some of you may be familiar. And there's many different side stories in the Mahabharata, those who are familiar with it. But the main plot is that the Pandavas, who were the rightful heirs to the throne, were cheated out of the kingdom by their cousins, the Kauravas. It's a long story, but they have as their friend Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna, as explained in the 4th chapter, he comes to this world when there are great discrepancies in Dharma, when Dharma has become obscured by many demons. And yada yada hi dharmasya glani bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadavanam sajamiham. I think this verse is like you learn it with your mother's milk, and you grow up in a Hindu house, I think. Anyone knows it. So what it says is whenever and wherever there are discrepancies in Dharma, Dharma siglani means that Dharma, or real religion, is being obscured and distorted. At that time I come. I descend. I appear as an avatar. And I protect the devotees. I reestablish Dharma, and I eliminate the miscreants, the atheists who are propagating adharma. Dharma and adharma. So that's a central kind of theme in the Mahabharata and also in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, at the beginning, he's the greatest fighter on the side of the Pandavas. And Krishna is also on that side. But he has no army, and he's pledged not to fight. He's taken up the role as a servant of his servant. It's very touching, actually. This is one of the aspects of Bhakti Yoga, is that Krishna sometimes agrees to serve his servant because he gets so much pleasure out of doing that. So Arjuna is clearly his servant, but he takes the role of Arjuna's chariot driver, which is a servile position. So what happens at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the 1st chapter, is that Dhritarashtra is hearing the doings from his servant Sanjaya, who has this mystic power to be able to see what's going on and hear what's going on the battlefield at a distance. So that's the beginning. And what happens is that Duryodhana, or Dhritarashtra, wants to know what's going on the battlefield. And we find that Duryodhana, who is the leader of the opposition to the Pandavas, he is assessing the different sides. And he's praising his own side, and he's criticizing the other side like that. And so we learn somewhat of who's on the battlefield. And then they start blowing these conch shells. And first Duryodhana and Bhishma and the other, Bhishma Dev especially, he blows this huge conch shell. And it produces a very huge sound. Sometimes we get a little of that here, where devotees get really into it and they really blow the conch shell. It's like ear splitting. But you can imagine like thousands of conch shells blowing at once. It's really a very bracing sound. And then Krishna and Arjuna and the others on the Pandava side blow their conch shells, and it shatters the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. In other words, the real sound of Krishna's conch shell and his followers, they're going to be victorious ultimately. So there's a harbinger of victory. So then what happens is Arjuna asks Krishna to drive the chariot in between the armies. There's these huge armies on this battlefield. And then there's a no man's land in between where there's no, and they're facing each other. So the battle is imminent. And Arjuna is the protagonist on the side of virtue. So he wants to see who's on the other side that he's going to do battle with. So he gets closer and he sees, there's his teacher, Dronacharya. He sees Bhishma Dev, who's the worshipable grandfather for both sides. And he sees many of his friends and relatives. And suddenly he gets cold feet, so to speak. He says, why do I want to fight this battle? He's covered by illusion. Because the result of the battle, if he wins, will be the kingdom. But that kingdom will be soaked with the blood of those who are dear to him, his relatives, even the sons of Dhritarashtra who tried to kill him and his brothers. He doesn't want them to be harmed either, because he's a soft-hearted Vaishnava at heart. That's also part of it, although he's a great fighter. So then he comes up with all of these arguments for why he shouldn't fight. And he bases it on the Vedas. The Vedas are very vast, and part of what the Vedas mention is the need to have good progeny in society. And that only happens with stable families and so forth. So he's saying, well, suppose I have to kill all these men. Then what will happen to their wives? They'll all become widows. And then we'll have Varna Sankara. Well, the society will become distorted. There'll be all kinds of unwanted children. And this is one thing. And there won't be anyone to offer pinda to the forefathers. And they'll be suffering, there's all these arguments he has based on the Vedas, certain part of the Vedas. So after all of that, but then he's kind of torn. He's paralyzed because right on his chariot is Krishna, who he knows is God and who wants him to fight. Hare Krishna. We'll wait. Thank you. And so he knows that Krishna wants him to fight. The whole battle was arranged by Krishna because Krishna wants Dharma to be reinstituted in the world for the benefit of everybody. But at the same time, his gut is telling him, I don't want to participate in this battle. So he's paralyzed. And he drops his bow, he's crying, his hair is standing on end. And so in that situation, he surrenders to Krishna as a guru. He's not ready to fight yet, but he's ready to give up his arguments, which is based on mental speculation. And instead he accepts Krishna as a spiritual master. There's a difference in the relationship. Because in other words, he's looking for him to tell him absolute knowledge this time. And so after that, then Krishna starts the Bhagavad Gita, text 11 of the previous chapter. The whole first chapter is Arjuna's paralysis. And then the second chapter begins that way, but then it transforms. Text 11, Krishna starts his instruction. And then for 20 verses, he instructs on the nature of the soul as distinct from the body. This is the first step in any kind of process of self-realization or enlightenment. We have to know who we are. We have to know where we came from, what this world is all about, and what the source of everything is. This is the basic questions, which we can't understand just by our own speculation or our own senses. It is all transcendental knowledge. So after speaking about the soul, Krishna then is now beginning to speak, or starting text, what was it? I think 31. Then he's talking about the process of Buddhi Yoga and Karma Yoga. And the reason he does that, it's not exactly Bhakti Yoga yet, but Prabhupada makes it very clear that ultimately Buddhi Yoga means Bhakti Yoga. Buddhi Yoga means engaging one's intelligence in understanding the difference between the soul and the body, and that one is bound up in the present state, conditioned state, by the desires for the fruits of activity and by previous karma. So once you know the difference between the soul and the body, that the soul is eternal, the body is temporary. Well, if the soul is eternal, then what happens after death? You take another body. The first lesson is transmigration. And that means that we also existed before this body. So that should change our whole perspective on what's important in life. Because even in this, if we're simply thinking in terms of this life, or even a few years hence, we're missing the big picture. We're missing the big picture of what's important in our lives and what really the goal of life is. And Prabhupada makes it very clear in his purports that the soul's mission is to escape from the bondage of birth and death, from the bondage to a material body. That's really our mission in life. And all of our activities should be somehow related to achieving that success in that mission. So Krishna has spoken about breaking free from the bondage of karma by giving the fruits of our activity for God, or as much as possible, rather than becoming attached to the fruits and working always in that fruitive mentality. So now, for 2 verses, he's going to say, when intelligence is passed out of the forest dense of delusion, you will become indifferent to all that has been heard from the materialistic part of the Vedas. The Vedas also have something called Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda is full of all these rituals and instructions for how you can better improve your life in this world by worshiping the gods and performing sacrifices, and then also how you can go to heavenly planets and enjoy for many, many years there. The heaven in the Vedic paradigm is not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is what we call Vaikuntha, or the spiritual world beyond the limits of this material world. But there's also higher planets in which you live for a longer time in much better circumstances. Indraloka, Brahmaloka, Suryaloka, and many others. So how do we know about them? From the Vedas. And they teach you all kinds of rituals how you can get there. That's what Krishna is saying. You'll become indifferent to hearing this. You'll become indifferent to hearing these materialistic parts of the Vedas. When your knowledge, your intelligence is passed out of the deep forest, or the entangling forest of delusion. Now in this purport, Prabhupada quotes from this verse by Madhavendra Puri. Now who is Madhavendra Puri? Madhavendra Puri is a great devotee in the line from Madhvacharya. Some of you may have heard him. There are four main sampradayas, or disciplic lines of Vaishnavas, coming down from Krishna ultimately. But then there's one coming through Brahma, there's one coming through Shiva or Rudra, there's one coming from Lakshmi, and there's one coming from the four Kumaras. And they all have their lines come in, yes. We belong, this Hare Krishna movement, Lord Chaitanya, in the Brahma Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya. Originally from Krishna to Brahma. He heard the Srimad Bhagavatam in 4 essential verses from Krishna. He was also enlightened in the heart by the sound of the flute, entered his heart and became fully aware of all the Vedic knowledge. And so then he taught his son, Narada, who taught Vyasadeva, who wrote so many things down. He wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. He wrote the Mahabharata, Vyasadeva. So Madhavendra Puri comes in the line of Madhvacharya, who's coming down from Lord Brahma. And but Madhavendra Puri, although he came in the line of Madhva, and Madhvacharya, called the Tattvavadis, they worship Lakshmi Narayan. Lakshmi Narayan are existentially, ontologically non-different from Radha and Krishna. But Lakshmi Narayan, Lakshmi is an expansion of Radharani, and Narayan or Vishnu is an expansion of Krishna. You see. And ultimately it all starts with Krishna, because Radharani is also an energy of his, so it all comes from that source. But the worship of Lakshmi Narayan is more official. It's more in the mood of awe and reverence. You know, you understand, oh, this is God, the 4 arms, you've seen Narayan, Lakshmi. And, Lakshmi is the source of all wealth. We even say, how much Lakshmi did you collect today? But you don't have those intimate, you have the mood of service, our eternal servants, so that's fine. And then you go to Vaikuntha Loka. Vaikuntha Loka, everybody has 4 arms. And you all understand who is God, and you have a very reverential and formal relationship. That's fine. But more intimate than that is Goloka Vrindavan. That's where you find Krishna with his cowherd friends and the gopis and the cows and all of that, the sweet relationship. You can have a friendly relationship with God, even a parental relationship. This is why we have Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj and all the elder gopis. So these these upper 3 rasas, the Shanta ras means just a passive relationship. But Dasya ras is the servant relationship, which everyone in Vaikuntha has to Lakshmi and Narayan. But then higher and more intimate than that is Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna appears in his sweetest, most accessible form, as almost like a human being. You see, and that's where we're headed. That's where we want to go. So Krishna here is saying to Arjuna, once you have gone beyond the rules and regulations of the Karmakanda section of the Vedas, you will become nirvedam, indifferent to hearing any of this, and you will ultimately come to what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita: just give up all the other dharmas, just surrender unto me. This is the whole essence of it. It comes in the chapter 18. Sarva dharma parityajya mamekam sharanam bhaja aham tvam savapapabhyo mokshiyasyami mamesha. And the previous verse, he gives those 2 verses. So I put them into a little poem. One says, Manmana bhavamadbhakto bhajaji mam namaskuru Mame Veshasi Satyam Te Pratijane Piyosime. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend, I promise you this boon I shall bestow. Give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins I'll nullify, O Arjun. From anxiety be free. So this is the conclusion to everything that Krishna speaks in the Gita. So he'll ultimately bring Arjun to that point. And this beautiful verse by Madhavendra Puri, he's explaining, these are all wonderful things. Prayers 3 times a day, bathing. Now, of course, as devotees, we bathe. Cleanliness is a very important part. But not this whole ritual bathing where you may take a long time saying so many mantras, and have to bathe at just the right time and all this. That's not so important. In the shower, whatever, you bathe. But don't make a big deal out of it. You bathe, you dress nicely, and then begin chanting Hare Krishna. That's the basic principle. So Madhavendra Puri, he introduced into the Madhva Sampradaya the worship of Radha and Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya, Madhavendra Puri's disciple was Ishvara Puri. Ishvara Puri took on the role as the guru of Lord Chaitanya himself, who was Krishna, really appearing as his own devotee. So here he's saying, basically, all of these rituals, I offer obeisances, but I'm not going to pay too much attention, because smadam agam harami tadalam. I am simply again and again remembering Krishna, who takes away all the sins, and that's enough for me. So this is important for us, because it means we don't have to worry about all of the officials and the rituals and the rules and spend many, many years learning Sanskrit. You don't need to know Sanskrit to be a Hare Krishna. Just a little. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. That's enough. Now, of course, Prabhupada wanted us to chant the verses here, so we make an effort, but if you can't do it, you're still not demoted, you can still advance. But the main thing is to, Prabhupada would quote a verse, he's kind of referring to it. Aradito yadhiharis tapasata takkim. Naradito yadhiharis tapasata takkim. Anta bahis yadhiharis tapasata takkim. Nanta bahir yadhiharis tapasata takkim. So what it means is, aradito, it's kind of an odd verse, you can hear the repetition. So aradito yadhiharis. If you're already worshipping Aradhana, Hari, then what's the use of all of your extreme austerities and penances? And if you're not worshipping Hari, then what's the use of all your austerities and penances? If you're seeing Hari, Krishna, within and without, then what's the use of all your severe austerities and penances? And with all of your penances and austerities, if you can't see Hari and without, what's the use of them? So in other words, we're not into severe austerities and penances. We're into those that are prescribed, which are not that severe at all, which bring us to the point of bhakti. Everything is subsumed to that. And so that's why it's accessible to everybody. We're sitting here with such a variety of ages, such a variety of points of origin, races. It doesn't matter. There's no prerequisite. Anybody, anytime, from any culture can chant Hare Krishna and advance in devotional service. It's absolutely open to everyone, even non-humans. Lord Chaitanya sent a dog back to guide it. And the elephant Gajendra was offering his prayers in his mind and went back. You know what I'm saying? What to speak of us? Yeah. So that's what this verse is all about. And there's another one, it's similar one to in 53. So if there's no discussion on this, Jamal, can you activate that mic and say in case we have any questions? Yeah, we have the other mic now. Okay, so we'll go on to 53. We just chant it once. Shruti vipadipannate yadasta sati nishchala samadhavatala buddhis tadaguyogamavapsisi. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. Purport. To say that one is in samadhi is to say that one has fully realized Krishna consciousness. That is, one in full samadhi has realized Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna, and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. A Krishna-conscious person, or unflinching devotee of the Lord, should not be disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, nor be engaged in fruitive activities for promotion to the heavenly kingdom. In Krishna consciousness, one comes directly into communion with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. One is sure to achieve results by such activities and attain conclusive knowledge. One has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. So just one reference here to the flowery words of the Vedas. This came up in text 42 to 43, where Krishna says, men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. This is on page 110. The flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, result in good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So Krishna is critical there. In other words, these are called Vedavada Ratha, means so-called knowers of the Vedas. They know the Vedas to some degree, but only certain parts of it, and they've missed the whole point of the Vedas. As Krishna says in the 15th chapter, Vedaischa Sarvaya Ahameva Vedya. By all the Vedic knowledge, I am to be known. So if your Vedic study is not leading you to understanding of Krishna and your relation to Krishna, then it's a waste of time. It's better than complete ignoring the Vedas, but you kind of miss the point, and you still have to come to the actual thrust of the Vedas. That's the whole idea here. So now Krishna has said, we just read, Achala buddhi, samadha vajala buddhi, you will be stasyati, nishchala, you'll be fixed when you become indifferent to these other goals of the Vedas. And then Arjun's going to ask a question in 54. What is someone like who's fixed in consciousness, and what does he talk? How does he walk? Like, he wants to know the symptoms. And Krishna will give some very important instructions starting in text 55, describing a pure devotee in the highest state. So it's good to hear what the goal of the whole thing is, so that you can be enlivened to strive toward the goal. Because factually speaking, Krishna, it's very absolute philosophy. It is saying that anything you do that is a diversion from this goal, it means that you're under illusion, and you're simply prolonging your term of imprisonment in this material world. This material world, why does it exist? I remember as a kid, a young man, 17, 18 years old, I was very inquisitive, I had a philosophical mind, and I wanted to know what's the purpose of all this? And I was diverted into existential philosophies, which basically said there is no purpose. There's no purpose to any of it, And I wasn't satisfied with that answer. Unfortunately, I came across the Hare Krishna movement, the devotees, and the books of Krishna consciousness. There is a purpose, but you can't understand it with our present conditioned mind, because we don't have the facility. It's just this whole world is created for two purposes, really. One is to provide a field in which we can try to enjoy separately from Krishna and be slapped down repeatedly and finally learn our lesson. And the other is to provide a means, in spite of the fact that it's all material, that if we have a contact with the right knowledge in the Vedas and persons who are in that knowledge, we can actually be trained in how to use our life in this material world to get out of the material world. The example is given. I remember this as a child. I used to get splinters. We lived in an apartment near New York, and it was an older. They had nice wooden floors, but I would run around like any kid, and I would get splinters. And I would ask my mother, "Can I borrow your sewing box?" Because I knew there were needles in there. And I would carefully take out a needle, and I would carefully dig out the splinter, and then I would wash that foot, and I would, put the needle back in, and then I'd start running around again. So the idea is that the needle is the sewing needle is also a kind of splinter. So you're using the splinter to take out a splinter. So similarly, we're conditioned by this human body. The body is really the source of all of our suffering here, when you think about it. It's eventually something happens. Like I did something with my arm. Now it's getting better, but it's been like a month. And I haven't been able to play with the Whompers and everything. I mean, eventually stuff happens, right? Somehow I bumped my shoulder, my elbow, and got some nerve damage or whatever. So that's, eventually stuff happens in this world. There's accidents, there's disease, there's the flu, there's war, there's other people, there's an earthquake threatening at every moment. There's three sources of misery. We should remember this. You don't have to know the technical term. Adhyatmic, adhibautic, adhidaivik. Adhyatmic are those miseries that are caused by your own body and mind. Now here we go again. Hare Krishna. We'll wait. Okay, any other cell phones that may go off, please put them on silent at least. So, we all experience this. Something happens and you internalize it and it disturbs you. You can't sleep. You get depressed, whatever, It can get very serious to the point of you need to take a pill. But whatever it is, your own mind is bothering you. Or you have some congenital defect, and you can't walk properly. There's always this kind of suffering. A million different things can go wrong. The own body and mind, clearly they're sources of suffering. We've all experienced, even in young people. Then there's other people, adhibautic. Whenever I think of this one, I always think of a play I once read. I think it's by Jean-Paul Sartre. He went through the war in France. The whole thing of leading existentialist. I don't know if they read him anymore, but all of his stuff is a very dark coloring to it. Because it basically came to the conclusion of atheism and nothing really has any meaning. So he wrote a play called No Exit, I think it was, and I only remember one line from that play. And that was that somebody said, hell is other people. Can you imagine living a life like that where you're so alienated, So that was his assessment. So, but sometimes, other people do cause you tremendous suffering. Or other living entities, bugs, or different animals or something. Other embodied beings. That's adhibautic. Who can decide? Bed bugs. Prabhupada gives you an example of bed bugs on his lecture. And then adhidaivik. These can be spectacular things. We had these hurricanes coming that are more powerful all the time. We have a winter storm that just tore through the whole Midwest. It had a name. I didn't know they're naming these storms now. I swear to God, as Krishna's my witness, they named this storm Indra. I swear to God. Yeah, I read it. Storm Indra. But it's not Hurricane Indra. But it can cause deaths, the flooding and all this. That's adhidaivik. So one or more of these we're either suffering from or they're threatening to give us. This is the material world. Krishna stamps it. He certifies it in the 8th chapter. Dukkhalayam ashastratam. This world is dukkha, the abode of misery. We try, it's not constant. We have places where, okay, I'm doing okay. But give it time. Give it time. Eventually, time brings all kinds of, So, is that all there is to life? Is this all there is? I don't remember anything before my last birth, and I don't know what's going to happen after death. So maybe it's just this one little life. That's all there is to it, right? And it's just a tale told by an idiot. Wasn't that Shakespeare? Fretting and strutting your time upon the stage. It looks like that. So, but Krishna says no. No, we learned from the Vedic literatures. Prabhupada came to America in 1965, and everyone was exploring. There was LSD. It was the hippie era and things. God consciousness. But quickly, I was there. I witnessed it. Thank God I never took the heavy drugs. But it went through a trajectory, and eventually the drugs changed. From marijuana and LSD to heavy amphetamines and other things that were just self-destructive. It was a passing phase, but during a certain time there was so much exploration going on, and people were asking these questions, and Prabhupada came and he gave the actual answer. He gave the answer, which is bhakti yoga based on the chanting of the holy name. That there is a world, a wonderful world where it's ideal. This is the spiritual world. This is a reflection. This world is a reflection, and a perverted reflection. Just as there's love in the spiritual world between man and woman, Radha and Krishna and the gopis and all these things in friendship. So we have that here. But here it has a beginning and an end. it has a tragic end. Even it's the best marriage in the world, it comes to an end. How can it not? The force of time. But there it's endless. There's no, Prabhupada's famous, he's changing the meaning of this word, inebriety. Means negativity. It means downside. It's not dependent on the fragile arrangement of matter, which will always change. So Krishna is giving us a hint of it here, and now he's going to be describing in text 54, after 55 on, the state of the great devotees, even here in chapter 2, because it's the contents of the Gita summarized. So let's just, we'll read text 54, and then 55 will start tomorrow. Okay, 54. Arjuna asks the question because Krishna says, he talks about someone who's fixed in trance of self-realization. So Arjuna wants to know. Arjuna vacha stita pragyasya kabasha samadhis tasya keshava stita dikim pabhasheta kimasita vajeta kim. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms or characteristics of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?" Purport: as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man and human being. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks, but as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptoms of a Krishna-conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below. Okay. All right, let's just read this first one. We may go over it again on tomorrow. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partamanogathan atmanivatmana tushta stita pragyastadochite. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness." Purport: the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendently situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. So there's a lot to say on this one, and we don't have that much time because I want to read from Krishna book. But the idea, we have someone in there. The idea is this is description of this high state. Prajahati means completely giving up all material desires that arise from the mind. These are all just mental concoctions. I was just reading, I get this health newsletter, and one of the things he was describing, 7 ways to avoid cancer, And the first one is, don't smoke. Duh. Who wouldn't, of course. But he's listing there all the damage that goes on when you smoke. I used to smoke. Let's see, that was 56 years ago. I smoked for about 7 years. But I was 15, it was the middle of the 60s, the early 60s. And everyone was smoking. Everyone on the TV, everyone on the movies, and my older friends were smoking. Okay, I'll start smoking. So then he's listing, and there's all of these poisons in the smoke. There's the cyanide and the benzene and all of this. And so, you say, well, who in his right mind would smoke? And yet, even though it's finally dawned on people, smoking is decreasing in America. But still there's a lot of people smoking. Why? Because you've got yourself hooked on something, it's the nicotine, whatever. And it's overcome your intelligence. This is the whole point, is that the kama, the material desire which you develop, either in a physical or mental, emotional state, whatever it may be, covers your intelligence. That'll come up at the end of chapter 3. Kama esha, krodha esha, says, jnanam avritta dehinam. It covers the knowledge of the soul, the real knowledge. So how do you get free from this? It's like an addiction. Everybody's addicted in this world. It may not be obvious, but we're all addicted to our different ideas, to our different kinds of sense gratification, conceptions of ourselves, which we're comfortable with. Krishna consciousness is very revolutionary. It's meant to uproot our entire conception of who we are. None of us are these bodies. None of us are men, women, old, young, Kenyans or whatever it may be, Americans. No. That's just a temporary designation. Any more than if I drive a Ford car, I'm a Ford. I used to have one of those a long time ago. Now I have a little Toyota. Oh, I moved up. Now I'm Toyota. It's foolish, isn't it? People identify with this, go, oh, okay, I got a Lexus now. I'm really having but it's silly. So who am I? Krishna says, as Lord Chaitanya, Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. This is such an important line. Listen to this one. Jiva, we are the Jiva. Jiva Swarup. The Swarup is who we really are. It does not change. This is who we really are. Krishnera Nityadas, eternal servants of Krishna. Now we're serving our senses, we're serving our mind, we're serving this person, that person. That's all mistake. We're servants of Krishna. And when we act that way, and that's what bhakti means, okay, you may not understand it, but just act that way. How? Chant Hare Krishna. As soon as you chant the holy name, seriously, with a little attention for some time, suddenly your whole conception of yourself and the world changes. And you can feel at least a hint of that transcendental pleasure that can ultimately become the central fact of your life, to the point where prajahati yada kaman, all the kamas, all the desires that arise from the mind, you can give up and reject. And subsume them under this one desire, which is completely fulfilling, to serve Krishna and be Krishna conscious. It's such an absolute delight. Our great acharyas say, how much does nectar have this 2 syllables Krishna produced? When I chant them, I want to have millions of mouths. It's so sweet, madhurya. We don't taste it that way yet because we're in ignorance, covered by the bile of ignorance. But the pure devotees can taste it that way, and they can give us the way to understand it. Hare Krishna. And on that note, we'll end our Bhagavad Gita reading, and we'll read a little bit from Krishna book. So this is like your one night, huh? A week, Tuesday? Okay.
This week Tuesday, next week Monday.
Okay. All right. So, it's acting up. Did I do something? Okay. Everybody say a prayer. All right, we're going to read from Krishna book. Krishna book is all about Krishna's Leela. It's a summary of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's not Kartik yet, but we happen to be on chapter 9. We're going to read about the Krishna, Yashoda binds Krishna. Okay, you ready for this? This is a preview. Once upon a time, So these are like the sweetest pastimes. Krishna's like a few years old, maybe 4. I think he's under 5 at this point, 3 or 4. And Yashoda is described here what's happened. Once upon a time, seeing that her maidservant was engaged in different household duties, Mother Yashoda personally took charge of churning butter. And while she churned, she sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna and enjoyed thinking of her son. The end of her sari was tightly wrapped while she churned, and on account of her intense love for her son, milk automatically dripped from her breasts, which moved as she labored very hard, churning with 2 hands. The bangles and bracelets on her hands tinkled as they touched one another, and her earrings and breast shook. There were drops of perspiration on her face, and the flower garland on her head scattered here and there. Before this picturesque sight, Krishna appeared as a little child. He felt hungry, and to increase his mother's love, he wanted her to stop churning. He indicated that her first business was to let him suck her breast, and then she could churn butter later. Mother Yashoda took her son on her lap and pushed the nipple of her breast into his mouth, and while Krishna was sucking the milk, she was smiling, enjoying the beauty of her child's face. But suddenly, the milk which was on the stove began to boil over. To stop the milk from spilling, Mother Yashoda at once put Krishna aside and went to the stove. Left in that state by his mother, Krishna became very angry, and his lips and eyes became red in rage. He pressed his teeth and lips, and taking a piece of stone, he immediately broke the butter pot. He took some butter out of it, and with false tears in his eyes, he began to eat the butter in a secluded place. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda returned to the churning place after setting the overflowing milk pan in order. She saw the broken pot in which the churning yogurt had been kept. Since she could not find her boy, she concluded that the broken pot was his work. She smiled as she thought, "The child is very clever. After breaking the pot, he's left this place, fearing punishment." After she sought all over, she found her son sitting on a big wooden grinding mortar, which was kept upside down. He was taking butter from a pot hanging from the ceiling on a swing, and he was feeding it to the monkeys. She saw Krishna looking this way and that in fear of her because he was conscious that he had been naughty. After seeing her son so engaged, she very silently, carefully approached him from behind. But Krishna saw her coming toward him with a stick in her hand, and he immediately got down from the grinding mortar and began to flee in fear. Yashoda chased him to all corners, trying to capture the Supreme Lord, who was never approached even by the meditations of great yogis. In other words, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, who was never caught by the yogis and speculators, was playing just like a little child for a great devotee like Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda, however, could not easily catch the fast-running child because of her thin waist and heavy body. Still, she tried to follow him as fast as possible. Her hair loosened, and the flowers in her hair fell to the ground. Although she was tired, she somehow reached her naughty child and captured him. When he was caught, Krishna was almost on the point of crying. He smeared his hands over his eyes, which were anointed with black eye cosmetic. The child saw his mother's face while she stood over him, and his eyes became restless from fear. Mother Yashoda could understand that Krishna was unnecessarily afraid, and for his benefit she wanted to allay his fear. Being the topmost well-wisher of her child, she thought, "If the child is too fearful of me, I don't know what will happen to him." So she threw away her stick. To punish him, she thought to bind his hands with some ropes. She didn't know it, but it was actually impossible for her to bind the Supreme Lord that way. Mother Yashoda was thinking that Krishna was her tiny child. She didn't know that the child had no limitation. There's no inside or outside of him, no beginning or end. He's unlimited and all-pervading. Indeed, he is himself, the whole cosmic manifestation. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking of Krishna as her child. Although he is beyond the reach of all senses, she endeavored to bind him to a wooden grinding mortar. But when she tried to bind him, she found that the rope she was using was too short by 2 inches. She gathered more ropes from the house and added to it, but still she found the same shortage, 2 inches. In this way, she connected all the ropes available at home, but when the final knot was added, she saw that the rope was still 2 inches too short. Mother Yashoda was smiling, but she was astonished. How was it happening? In attempting to bind her son, she became tired. She was perspiring, and the garland on her head fell down. Then Lord Krishna appreciated the hard labor of his mother, and being compassionate toward her, he agreed to be bound up by the ropes. Krishna, playing as a human child in the house of Mother Yashoda, was performing his own selected pastimes. Of course, no one can control the Supreme Lord. The pure devotee surrenders himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee. But for his part, the devotee never forgets his own position. Similarly, the Lord also feels transcendental pleasure by submitting himself to the protection of the devotee. This was exemplified by Krishna's surrender unto his mother Yashoda. So now I'll give you my little poem about this pastime. At last Yashoda caught her naughty child, who'd smashed a pot of yogurt in a pique. Though seemingly annoyed, she felt beguiled by little Krishna's loving charm unique. "Oh imp, I've caught you now. But do not fear, you see I've thrown my stick upon the floor. But I must bind you with these ropes, my dear, lest you increase your mischief more and more." And so Yashoda bound the little son, who hid his glory to evoke her love. The blessings she enjoyed are never won by gods and goddesses who dwell above. And on that note, we have to adjourn and prepare for the arti. Thank you for your attention. Hare Krishna. Okay.
You should go in the dark and die, you know? One day. You ought to get his body.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Vijnani Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswate Gauravanta Dharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Bhattacharita Sarine Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shivasari Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadita Radha Shivasa Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadita Radha Ashivasa Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Giridhari, Radha Gihari Radhe, Jai Radha Giridhari, Radha Gihari Radhe, Krishna Radha Giridhari, Jai Jai Om Prabhupada, Paramahamsa, Bhagavad-gita, Astrokarta, Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Bhagavad-gita, Astrokarta, Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Korti Vaishnavina Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem to Guru Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasadi Gaur, Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha, Krishna Gopinath Shyam Radhakund, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadik Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Swami Ki Jai. Ganga Mahi Ki Jai. Yamuna Mahi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Varanga. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Alada Lada Dayine.
Alada Lada Dayine.
Hiran Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Shilatankana Kalaye Hito Nishinga Parito Nishingo Yato Yato Yamishato Nishinga Mahir Nishingo Dindae Nishingo Nirsinghamadim Sharanam Prapaje Samakara Kamalavare Nakamadutta Kinga Andavita Hirannagishito Tanubringa Krishnavamrita Naradirupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Sapakara Samaravare Avakara Kamalavare Nakamadhuta Singha Dhavita Hirannagishito Tanubringa Krishnavamrita Naradirupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Karakamavare Haravitakinya Tanubringa Krishnavamrita Naradirupa Keshavadgita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadgita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadgita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadgita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Singh Hare, Singh Hare, Singh Hare, Jai Singh Hare, Singh Bhagavan ki Jai, Saradhara ki Jai, Gopenande Hari Hari Bol.
So now, there will be some prasad. Prasad, right? Food? Yeah, we'll be on it, right? Do you know what happens to the particles that they put on the...
Oh, they never took it to the program.
No, I put them on the... For you to play at the beginning class, I put them on the...
They were on that table. What happened to it?
I don't know.
I didn't take them.
Oh.
Can I take the scissors?
Oh, there they are. Never.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
basically.
You're always leading me astray.
The table plate, and then we can put it back in there. Okay, we can eat it. Up to you. No, that's one I'm scared to take it. You can have the sweet if you want. You can have whatever you want. You can bring it out. It's just out. Have something. I think it's all vegan anyway.
Vegetarian.
Oh, vegetarian. Okay.
Yeah.
They can choose what they can eat and what they can't. The last prayer when you're sitting down and doing it, is that's my favorite prayer. And that is about Lord Vishnudev and Prahlad Maharaj.
Well, maybe
So
that's.
this was like Prahlad Maharaj, this was going to little boy. And his father was Hiranyakashipu, the biggest demon. And what he wanted to do, so then he wanted to teach his son bad things. Prahlad Maharaj would always turn it into something good. And Hiranyakashipu would get he would get regrets and he wanted to plot to kill the son. So and when you have small things like little games like to kill the son, like Prahlad Maharaj, he used to think he was a demon. And that's when Lord Vishnudev, so this is the half lion and half human. It's part of Krishna that comes and protects Prahlad Maharaj. So the prayer that we say at the end is very, very powerful. It's a protection. It's to protect. One of my favorites.
What are the words that are
This is all the essentials of Bhagavad. I mean, they always have like subjects, it's always like a vegetarian meal, plus the sesame seed. It's blessed.
There's just
Like a
sweet
nectar.
taste at the end of the.
Okay. I know you won't have any, right, Gita? Maybe a little leaf, not even a tulsi leaf, no? But you can come take a
When they
look.
come.
This is prasad, you know what prasad.
And remember, though, you can't raise
Is that okay?
them.
Yeah, thank you. We're just on.
How about one of these? Chapuris, I'm not sure what they are. Sweets. And a spoon. Combination spoon and fork. Officially called a spork. And how about a little milk?
Oh,
You okay? You good? You have the same?
yeah, this is Mary, would you like to share?
So you just,
I'll share the chapati.
is that okay?
I'll share the chapati.
If you like her church pie. How about a little sweet, just a little tea? Is that okay?
Yeah.
And no milk? Okay. Vegan crap.
Yeah.
Come on, Rajesh.
Yeah.
Go ahead. She doesn't,
Not fast.
Underneath all that bluster, he's a great sannyasi, actually.
Right.
He's very advanced.